Have you ever watched a trailer and felt like it's hiding something from you? Because that's exactly the feeling I got after watching the trailer for Heart of the Beast. At first glance, it looks pretty simple. Brad Pitt, a plane crash, a dog, a fight for survival in the wilderness. But the more I watched it, the more I started noticing details that don't quite fit that simple explanation. And I think this movie might be hiding a much deeper story. Let's talk about it. The first thing that stood out to me wasn't the crash. It was the dog. And honestly, that's weird. Usually, in survival movies, the animal is just a companion, a side character. But in this trailer, the dog feels important, almost too important. In fact, if you pay attention, the trailer keeps returning to the dog again and again. Not just during action scenes, not just during dangerous moments, almost everywhere. It's like the filmmakers want us to keep looking at him. And that raises a question. Why? Because if this movie was only about survival, the trailer would focus mostly on Brad Pitt's character. But it doesn't. Instead, the dog gets nearly as much attention, and I don't think that's an accident. Now here's where things get interesting. Most viewers assume the crash is the main event, the big moment that changes everything, but I don't think so. Think about it. Movie studios usually hide their biggest surprises. They don't reveal them in the first trailer. Yet this trailer openly shows the crash, which makes me wonder, what if the crash isn't the story? What if it's just the beginning? What if the real story starts after the crash? Because the trailer keeps focusing on something else. Loneliness. Look at the shots. Huge mountains, massive forests, endless snow, tiny human, giant world. Again and again, the movie keeps reminding us how small Brad Pitt's character is, not just physically, emotionally, and that's where my biggest theory comes from. I don't think this movie is really about surviving nature. I think it's about surviving yourself. Listen to the words that appear in the trailer. It's not who you live for. That's a strange line. Most survival movies focus on staying alive. This one seems obsessed with why someone wants to stay alive. And those are very different questions, because one is about survival. The other is about purpose. What if Brad Pitt's character was already broken before the crash? What if he was carrying guilt, regret, grief? What if the wilderness isn't the real enemy? What if the real enemy is what's happening inside his head? Suddenly, the title starts feeling different. Heart of the Beast. Most people assume the beast is an animal, or maybe the wilderness itself. But what if the beast is something darker? Fear, trauma, loss, the part of yourself that wants to give up. And that brings us back to the dog, because here's something I noticed. The dog isn't treated like a pet. He's treated like a partner, sometimes even a guide. There are moments where it feels like Brad Pitt is following the dog rather than leading him, and that completely changes the relationship. What if the dog isn't being rescued? What if the dog is actually rescuing him, not physically, emotionally, helping him find a reason to keep moving forward when everything inside him wants to stop? And honestly, that would make this movie far more powerful than a simple survival story. There's another clue that people might miss. The trailer never really shows us a clear villain. No hunter, no monster, no obvious enemy. And when a movie avoids showing a villain, it's usually because the conflict is internal. The battle isn't against another person, it's against yourself, against fear, against despair, against hopelessness. That's why I think Heart of the Beast is secretly doing something clever. It's marketing itself as a survival movie, but underneath that, it might actually be a story about healing, a story about finding purpose after loss, a story about refusing to give up. And if that's true, the dog may end up being the most important character in the entire film, not because he helps Brad Pitt survive the wilderness, but because he helps him survive himself. And honestly, that might be the biggest clue hidden in the entire trailer. But that's just my theory. Did you notice any clues I missed? And what do you think the title Heart of the Beast actually means? Let me know in the comments.